Hello, guys, and welcome back to another installment of Galley Stories, stories of the Bering Sea and beyond. I am your host, Mark Kaler, and today we have the operations manager for the tender fleet of Trident Seafoods with us. Additionally, the assistant fleet manager in Bristol Bay for that said company, Blake Benson. Blake, how are you today?
Mark, it's a pleasure to be here on the back deck of the Gale. I've been here a few times, and glad to make it another one.
You've probably been here more than anybody else that's been on this show, actually.
I think that's correct. You and I
over the years.
Yeah, we've had a lot of great times here, hanging out and telling stories. So
always with the beer in hand. And
we both share a passion for Busch Light.
Not unlike today. Not unlike today.
Absolutely.
So I've already warmed him up with 1.5 beers here, guys. So we should get something good out of him. So Blake, you obviously you're one of our most avid listeners anyway. You're 30 episodes into it.
Yep.
So you know our format. So let's just get started with where were you born and what brought you to the industry.
So I was born in Broadview, Washington, which is just north of our home down here in Ballard. And I grew up in a family. My parents were both in the ski business, actually, ski and bikes. So my dad was partners or managed various ski shops throughout the Pacific Northwest. My mom was involved in the ski and bike business for a long time. So that was kind of our thing growing up. I actually didn't grow up in the fishing business, but I did grow up Norwegian. So that definitely helped when I got into the fishing business because it got me a little more street cred.
Right.
So, skiing and biking was always our thing. Childhood progressed. Started doing construction at a real young age at 13. Did that. Then I ended up at Washington State University. Did 4 years there. Had the time of my life. Go Cougs, for all you Husky fans listening.
And what was your degree in?
My degree was actually in organizational communications, which is essentially consulting. And took some business classes as well. So it was like 2008 or 2009. I think it was 2009. The recession was going on, and I was trying to pay for school. I was working different kinds of jobs and stuff like that over at the university, and it kind of got to a point where I was out of money, and the recession's going on. At that point in life, Dad was a general contractor, so his business was flat. With the recession, there wasn't any construction going on, so I was pretty much out of options financially. And I had a good friend of mine that was one of my roommates, and he had his father worked in the fishing business, and he had kind of taken care of some of the guys over the years as far as getting them jobs, whether it was gill netting or working as a processor in Alaska. So I kind of pulled my friend aside one afternoon, and I said, hey bud, I don't think I'm going to make it back next semester unless I figure something out this summer. I'm just out of money and I can't afford to go to school. So unless I can figure something out, I won't be back. At that point, I kind of started the conversation, but I heard your dad has taken care of some of our friends in the summer as far as, helping them into jobs in Alaska. And I was wondering if that's something that could possibly be an option for me. And he said, yeah, absolutely, no problem. Talked to my dad. So as all my friends were partying in Cabo for spring break, I was sitting at home broke, which actually worked out great because I went and interviewed with a guy by the name of Todd LeMay, and who was my friend's dad, for a job up in Alaska. And
so Tyson's the guy you went to?
Tyson, yep.
Okay.
So Tyson and I went to college together. And so I get a call back from Todd the next week, and he says, hey, I've got a pretty cool opportunity for you working, managing the office in Dillingham during the Bristol Bay sockeye season. And before he really even explained the job, I pretty much told him I'd take it. I mean, I was that desperate to make some dough. And so after he kind of explained to me, it was cool. I was doing a lot of fisherman relations and ordering a lot of parts and, a lot of accounting work and stuff like that. So even though I was totally scared, I just knew that I was going to figure out a way to make it work. So fast forward, and a couple months go by, and I show up in Dillingham, Alaska. next thing you know, I'm in charge of managing this office, and the only time I had ever been to Alaska is doing a lot of sport fishing up there. So this is like a whole new experience for me, and I'm like this 19-year-old kid who's just going, what have I got myself into? Well, anyways, kind of fast forward from there, 3 summers later, I told Todd, hey, look, I just graduated and college. I really appreciate this opportunity. It's been fantastic. And, but I won't be coming back next year. And he says, I kind of figured that, I understand. Thanks. You did a great job. I said, this was such an incredible experience. So I already had a job lined up after I got home that summer, working for this guy that I'd been working for off and on for years.
Oh, I want to pause you real quick. So you worked there for the 3 summers, every summer.
Yep.
You kept going back up.
Yep.
And you say, it was a great experience. What was so great about the experience of being in...
Alaska is just such an incredible, wild place. And the cool thing about Dillingham, Alaska is, you're in Bristol Bay, which is kind of more flat tundra, and, it's kind of a silty area, and, people always rant and rave about Southeast, but the cool thing is if you've ever had the chance to really go explore in Bristol Bay, especially in Dillingham, you're so close to Lake Lignagik, up through that whole lake system. So I had a lot of chances to go play up through there, which was cool because it was a pretty awesome wilderness experience. On top of that, I made all of these cool friends who I still keep in touch with today and get together with all the time and travel and ski with. And then on top of that, I got all these like really cool, unique skills that I learned like through the job, that were things that my friends weren't getting just from normal internships, in the real world. I mean, not only did I improve on my work ethic, but I was dealing with all kinds of real money and real numbers and all kinds of just different adverse situations. In
Alaska, if you don't have work ethic, you don't have a job.
No. I mean, you're basically on a plane home the next week, essentially. And a lot of people, unfortunately, figure that out real quick, that they're just not cut out for it. So I was dealing with all these crazy situations, and it was wild because I'd call home every once in a while, and my mom would be like, tell me a story. I'd start telling her these stories, of all these people that I was interacting with, and just the odd situations that they'd found themselves in. And some of them were sad, and some of them were really cool because I helped somebody out, and some of them were, really frustrating. And she's just sitting there like, what world are you living in these days,
right?
Kiddo?
Well, it's different up there.
It's so different, it's kind of it is the last frontier up there and kind of the Wild West. So I ended up just falling in love with it. And when I did my last summer up in Dillingham, I was really sad to leave. I mean, I had the bug. I really had the bug. So I went to work for this family friend after I graduated college doing construction. I got about 2.5 months into it, and I was just going, I got to get back up to Alaska. I got this incredible itch right now. And finally I decided that, the particular job I was working at, it just wasn't for me. So I called up, Todd, who's been a, long-time mentor of mine, and I said, hey, I got to get back up to Alaska. Is there any way you can kind of start sniffing around and seeing if there's some opportunities, at Trident? I'm really interested in the fishing business. And, boy, it only took Todd a couple days, and he called me back and said they're, hiring for an assistant for Matt Chester. And I said, okay. And he said, let me talk to some folks, and we'll see if we can get you an interview. And so, anyways, I got an interview, and about a month later, they called me up and said, we'd love to bring you on board. And it's been just a fast and furious wild ride ever since. Anybody that's ever been in this business knows it's just a constant emotional roller coaster. And at the
Ups
end of the
and
day,
downs. Every day.
Single day.
You can cycle through that 3 times in a day.
You never know. I mean, you never know. And I think that's what keeps a lot of us hooked, because sometimes you're sitting there and things couldn't be better, and the sun is shining, and you're in this gorgeous place, and then that's at 9 o'clock in the morning, and by noon you're exhausted, you're burned out, and you just about want to bury your hands in your face and start crying, but you're not going to because you don't want any of your friends to see you.
Right.
So, yeah, it just kind of all drew me in, and it's created a fantastic lifestyle for me. It's just so fascinating, so interesting. Everything changes constantly, so it just constantly keeps you on your toes. And me just being such an adrenaline junkie and one of those people that just starves and thrives for more, it's been an excellent fit in my life. So, yeah.
You spent some time out on the boats in Bristol Bay, the tendering and.
Yeah. I these days I'm spending about 3 weeks a year out on boats. I work road teching and buying herring out in Togiak.
We have never had someone on here explain that to us. Why don't you give us the process? Well, first of all, tell us about the herring fishery.
Yeah.
And then your road teching.
So for a long time, herring was a huge deal. It was a giant circuit throughout Alaska. They'd start, down in southeast, and actually they kind of start down in San Francisco, and then start working their way all up through southeast and Prince William Sound, and then they'd go over to Togiak, and then they'd start going up north through Norton Sound and Unalakleet. Well, today, herring, kind of the major herring fisheries are in two places. You've got Sitka and you've got Bristol Bay Togiak. So, most herring these days is caught with a seine net. So there's basically two kinds of seiners up in Bristol Bay. There's gill seiners, which are 32-foot gill net boats that they convert over to these little mini seiners for the Bristol Bay fishery. Or they've got your larger, like 52, 58, limit style seiners that go up there and participate. So it's all seine fish, and a lot of the fish is caught with spotter pilots, but they meter and sonar a lot of the fish too as well. It used to be just a huge deal, hundreds of boats up there, planes all over in the sky. Sitka's still kind of a wild show these days.
Planes are reporting down to the boat that hired them.
So what they do is they've got these spotter pilots up in the air, and the spotter pilots can essentially see the schools from the air. And then they've got an aircraft radio on board the seiner that, they take directions through, and so they guide them to the school. And there's all kinds of, strategy and things these
Top
folks do.
Top secret and on this channel.
Oh, yeah, I mean, it's super secretive. People are, trying to keep all information where the fish are secret. I mean, guys are turning off their AISs. It's a pretty cool deal to be a part of, really. So they purse in the herring, and then what they do is they pull a tender up alongside, once you've
with
actually
the
secured the school and pursed up with the fish still in the water. The tender drops a large Marco 10-inch pump into the actual herring seine itself, and just pumps
like
the fish right out.
It's like a 10-inch garden hose that goes down in there with a metal end on it, aluminum end on it.
Yep.
And it's almost siphoning it right out of the...
Absolutely. And, when you wrap a big school, it's just like absolute chaos. Everybody's, the guys on the back deck are trying to get as many corks, back on deck as possible, and, trying to get the purse line up. And then, a lot of times these schools can be 300 tons. So the fish are plowing in.
600,000 pounds of fish in one net.
Oh, yeah, there's been some pretty huge sets. I think in Sitka there's been some 1,000-ton sets before. So, cork management and everything's huge, and so sometimes some of the partner boats will bring their seine skiffs over and try to help out, because most of it's co-op.
Explain cork management.
Cork management is basically when the fish start plowing into the web on the seine, and they start pulling down like on the seine and the corks, and the rest of the school starts plowing over the top of the corks.
Because the corks have went under.
Yep. So, it's just whether you're throwing seal bombs into the net, trying to spook the fish, or guys will take their skiff and cut their seine skiff loose, and these big tractor jet skiffs are like flying around doing donuts and circles.
These days, are they still tossing seal bombs?
Yeah, if you can get your hands on them.
Yeah,
they're pretty tough to get your hands on.
You actually got to register to buy them now. Your boat has to be registered to buy them.
Yeah, speaking of a funny story, I had a buddy of mine, we were up in Alaska. We were, I think, like 20 or something like that, and we were sitting around having a couple Pepsis on the 4th of July.
Sure.
Well,
Pepsi is the brand of Alaska.
We're only 20, Mark, so never incriminate yourself.
Right, yeah. Pepsi.
Yeah, that's a plug, by the way. So they're going to sponsor this and give a bunch of money to the Fisherman's Memorial for that. So, yeah, we were up there having a couple Pepsis, and he didn't realize like how powerful a seal bomb was, so he lit it and tried to put it in my back pocket. And he must have been sugar high off all those Pepsis. And I actually heard him coming from right up behind me and turned around right as he's getting ready to slide that seal bomb in my back pocket.
You would have had no ass.
It would have debutted me. It would have debutted me. So it's
debutted Benson.
Yeah, there you go. We're gonna make up our own words.
Wow.
So back to herring though.
Wait. On the seal bomb thing, in Chignik though, we'd get them by the case. This is before they were restricted, right?
Yeah.
We literally have them. You could go pick them up in the stock room.
Yeah.
Right. And our big thing was trying to. At most plants, there's big aluminum totes where they store trash and stuff.
Yeah.
Well, the day they empty those are always good days because you wait till you see someone's getting ready to walk by one and you throw a seal bomb into it. There's nothing louder than a seal bomb going off in an aluminum tote.
I've got a lot of stories I can't tell about seal bombs.
Okay, back to
those
herring.
things, and I had a special relationship for a long time.
I think I went through a case in 2 days once. So.
Oh yeah. So back to herring. It's a pretty neat thing to watch. The fishery's actually getting more and more competitive. Again, there's a lot of companies that are starting to bring bigger boats in as far as the seiners themselves. So
how's the pricing doing on it now? I mean, I know it's been low. Because it used to be a lot.
Yeah, no, I mean the herring used to be incredibly valuable. It's still a valuable fish, but it's not like what it was,
right,
20 years ago or something like that.
Well, everything comes in cycles, right?
Yeah. So speaking of cycles, my seasons are all kind of secular too. So the next cycle of my spring is I transfer over to Bristol Bay and, work for Trident as the assistant fleet manager for salmon. And you want to talk about a cowboy fishery. Holy smokes. I mean, the bay is something else. It's an absolute all-out grind. And you've got all kinds of different fishermen and cowboys. Some of them are fishermen, for 5 weeks a year, just in the bay. And then some of them, do it year-round. And I've just absolutely loved being a part of Bristol Bay over the past few years. It's just a tremendous place. We've got a tremendous resource. And things look great for the bay going forward, which is so awesome too. There's certain fisheries in Alaska that are, kind of struggling throughout their cycles. And
Chignik
everything.
This year.
Chignik. I feel horrible for those
The prettiest
guys.
fish in Alaska.
Oh,
in my opinion.
Yeah. As Matt and I always say, beautiful Chignik bluebacks.
They're incredible fish.
Yeah.
And they got 126 sockeye this year.
Oh.
But all that speaks is volumes of our management, though, because they didn't allow the guys to fish because there wasn't enough through the weir.
Well, absolutely. I mean,
then it turned out to be 520,000 fish through the weir, which is ample for resupply.
We can't think about our resource in years. We can't think about it in decades. We have to think about it in generations. Because I sure plan on having my kids someday participate in these fisheries.
Well, you've had enough girlfriends that you should be able to work that out.
Next.
Okay, so last year in the Bay, wasn't it kind of a record year last year, and this year was even...
We had an unbelievably phenomenal year, again, in Bristol Bay. Things are just going so well, and that speaks a lot to our management. And it's just great to see everybody go up there and do well for the most part. The Bristol Bay fisheries come a long way, with many of the markets going over to, all chilled fleet, including Trident Seafoods. It's been awesome for our product because we're basically building quality on our product. And once you start to build quality, you start to build a brand name. And
we're not selling fish on here.
Come on, Mark. Let me get my pitch here. Eat more wild Alaskan seafood and sockeye.
Any seafood.
Any seafood. Any wild seafood.
Wild Alaska first, of course.
Yeah.
But yeah, we strongly encourage wild, never farmed.
Yep. So I've been witnessing a pretty interesting transformation as a lot of the fleet does a lot of investments into their boats in order to make them higher quality producing vessels. So it's been neat to see, and I think it's paying off for
getting that new refrigeration system, keeping the fish colder. And
Yep, I think it's paying off for all the stakeholders involved in that fishery.
So this year, Bristol Bay, last year it was a normal Bristol Bay season with a lot of fish. Mm-hmm. Every river got a good return.
Yep.
This year it was pretty centralized.
The year of the Nushagak.
Yeah. It was kind of odd, right? But then wasn't there like 1,000 boats fishing this one?
Yeah, there was like 700 or 800 boats at one point fishing one of the major river systems.
Leave it to the host to exaggerate the number, guys.
It was absolutely crazy. Anybody that was over in the Nushagak could tell the story better than I was. I was over at Naknek, but it was just it was absolutely wild how much fish we were hauling out of there. And our management team did an excellent job over there as far as handling it, and it seemed like all the other markets did a really good job as far as handling the volume of fish. So it was really, really, really cool to see everybody succeed, and it was just it was unbelievable. I mean, it really spoke volumes about how well our overall run is doing with throughout Bristol Bay. Now some of the other river systems kind of had down years to speak of, but boy, that mighty Noosh Wood River, it's something else.
Todd LeMay would say, yo,
the big river.
We were up in the Noosh,
the mighty river, the mighty Noosh.
Yeah, well, the other rivers, again, it's all about sustainability. They weren't being able to fish because Fish and Game said not enough through the winter.
Yep.
And that's how this works, guys. If they literally have the wall down with a few holes in it with cameras, and they count those fish going through. Now, not every minute of the fish, but they'll take a 5-minute average per hour, and those fish have to make a number before they allow the guys to go out and fish.
Yeah, so in Bristol Bay we use tower counters and sonar counters, and so essentially we have to meet a certain minimum escapement number, of fish in every single river system. And then the fisheries are managed with openings based on how they are tracking on that curve of their actual escapement goal. Mm-hmm. And it's really cool in the way they manage it. It's a science first approach, which is super awesome. And I think our biologists do a really, really, really stellar job. So that's why we can continue to succeed. Now, obviously, everything's somewhat secular. In fisheries,
ebb and flow.
It's all
like the currents.
There you go, ebb and flow, just like the currents and the tides, especially in Bristol Bay.
Oh, boy,
you want to talk about some tides?
Well, some of these guys can actually. You guys could Google what Jan's boat this year.
Oh yeah, the fishing vessel Christie.
Yeah. The fishing vessel Christie. If you Google that, you'll see the video of her. She lost her engine.
Yeah.
And was pushed back in between a Japanese tramper and a processing boat.
Yeah.
And you can literally see what the tide does, because they weren't under power. None of the 3 boats involved were under power.
No.
Two on anchor.
No, the tramper Christie, and the processor were on anchor. And the Christie actually drifted back.
Drifted back into the Yakamoto.
In between the big tramper, which is a freighter, mm-hmm. and a big floating processor ship, and then got wedged in between the Yokies. And
I saw that video and I just thought I'd be off that boat.
Oh, it's giving me goosebumps right now just thinking about it. I mean, the sheer amount of tear and how lucky those folks were.
Well, Jan was still trying to fix his engine.
Yeah,
he was trying to save that boat.
He was running around grabbing his wallet or whatever he was doing, and funny story about Jan actually. Jan was one of the first guys I ever met when I went to Dillingham. That first night when I was 19 years old and I showed up in Dillingham, I ended up meeting up with Jan and another guy named Carl Pedersen. So Jan and I go way back, and I'm just really happy for Jan and his family that they were able to make it off safe. It's really tragic about what happened to their boat.
Once he jumped off that boat, it went.
Yeah. I mean, there's no dollar amount that you can put on a human life.
Yeah.
So I'm just really glad they're safe.
Yeah.
You know, the boat can be replaced.
So you've been up there 10 years now.
Yeah, 10 seasons in Bristol Bay.
Yep. So, any scary experiences for you? I know you're out there running around on skiffs and some of those heavy waters and.
Togiak. I mean, I've had some land-based scary experiences, but that's just being stupid and naive running around out in the bush. But water-based experiences, it was my first season up there road-teching herring in Bristol Bay, and I was running around in a 24-foot Queejack skiff. Big, heavy-duty aluminum skiff that could take some serious weather.
Well, Queejacks are good boats.
They're great boats, made right here in Ballard, Washington. So I had this gal with me that was kind of teaching me how to cut fish, and it was a really crummy day. We were over off of Hagemeister, and we were rolling around real good. And you know, I think due to lack of experience, I I didn't kind of know when to say stop. You know, I was just like, we're going for this. You know, we're a bunch of badasses right here.
You were driving?
I was driving. And so there's this seiner that's in a set over off Hagemeister, and we're coming in, and I'm like, Casey, let's go in for this. And she kind of just looks back at me and goes, okay. You know, and so she hops up on the bow and grabs this big dip net, which she used to throw in the seine to grab a sample of fish before we sample it and cut it. And so Casey, she's up on the bow, and I'm like steering, and I'm trying to hold the boat into the swell and just jog on it right up next to the corks so we don't get caught up inside this seine. And all of a sudden I see this huge green thing just coming out of the corner of my eye. And I just screamed to her. I said, Casey, hold on. And she grabs onto this pole that was up there off this little platform on the bow of the skiff. And all of a sudden this huge just green wave comes and just clobbers right over the front of the bow, spins us 90 degrees sideways into the ditch of the waves, and just about wiped her off the front of the bow. And I was absolutely terrified. I was thinking, oh my gosh, I just washed this gal off the front of the boat.
And if you go off the boat in Bristol Bay, you're
yeah, well, the
dead.
tide's smoking,
You know.
and the wind's terrible, and the waves are crummy, and you know, then it's just me in this boat, you know, trying to recover over the side, and you know, mind you, we're up there in, you know, April and May, so the weather's like, or the water's like 39 to 42 degrees. I mean, it is chilly when these herrings start spawning, so you don't have a whole lot of time. Anyways, we get spun sideways, and you know, finally I look up, and she's still hanging on. She's this tiny little gal. I mean, really tiny, like, you know, 5'3", something like that. And I kind of get the boat straightened out and kind of peel away from this set. And she kind of walks back, and I just, like, grab her, and I'm like, are you okay? And she's just, yeah, I'm okay. And she just starts breaking down and crying, and I kind of grab her and I hang on to her, and I kind of start tearing up myself. You know, it was a pretty emotional moment. She's actually pretty lucky this thing didn't just cream her off the front of this boat.
To put it in perspective, you were the captain of that boat at that moment.
I was driving the boat. I mean, everything that was going on was, you know, it was my call to still be out there. You know, I was navigating the boat. I mean, everything was my responsibility. Her safety was my responsibility. And I remember after I kind of grabbed her, and you know, we kind of got her warmed up a little bit because she got pretty wet and waterlogged, I drove over to this seiner, and I said, you think you got anything in the bag? And they said, oh, you know, we might have 30 tons. And I said, I'm done. And so they said, okay. And they cut the net loose, and one of the deckhands, it was this older gentleman from Kodiak, he kind of walked over to the side, and he kind of looked at me, and he gave me this little pep talk real quick. And he just said, hey, there's no fish in this sea that is more valuable than a human life. Sometimes you just got to say, we can't do it. And that always kind of resonated and stuck with me.
And you were 19.
I wasn't 19 at that point. I think that year I was like 20, 22 or something like that. And it's just always stuck with me. I mean, these days I'm managing boats now, and every time I send one of these boats away from the dock, I always think about it like this. Would I put my family member on that vessel? Do I feel comfortable putting one of my own flesh and blood on that vessel, and sending them out to sea? I mean, I take a great responsibility in making sure that I do everything in my power to make sure that, these boats are in tip-top seaworthy shape, and that these crews have the best chance against, Mother Nature and just all the other factors that we constantly deal with.
Did she have a vest on?
She did have a vest on. And that's one thing I've always been huge on is life jackets. I mean, you read all the articles in Pacific Fisherman and all these Coast Guard news bulletins and everything like that. If you don't wear a life jacket, well, there's no reason not to. Right. I mean, there's nothing about not wearing a life jacket. It's just just do it. Just do it. So yeah. I've had some pretty close calls too. I had one time where I thought I blew my knee out, falling between some ladders, jumping between some boats.
That was last year?
That particular one was a couple years ago. This last year I smashed my foot pretty bad up on the herring ground. Spent some time in a walking boot. Taught myself a lesson on that one.
Stayed up there and worked the whole time though?
Yeah, well, I didn't really have a choice. I was told I was going back to the beach on that one. But I stayed up there until we finished the fishery. And then went home and took care of a few things in Seattle. I went overboard one time up in Togiak. That was pretty scary.
How'd that work out?
I ended up making it back aboard.
No, how'd you go over?
Oh.
You weren't peeing, were you?
No. The time I went overboard was I was managing the gillnet herring fleet in Togiak back when we were buying gillnet fish. And hadn't slept in a while, kind of one of those stupid, tired decisions. I'd been sitting up in a wheelhouse on the radios, taking radio calls and, scheduling tenders, whatever, bringing fishermen in. And I had a pair of sweatpants on, sweatshirt, and a pair of Nike Slide flip-flops on.
I'm not hearing a life vest.
No life vest. Here's another plug for why you should always wear a life vest.
You should always, yeah.
So there was two tenders tied up alongside of each other. One was a big crab boat, and the other one was a wooden power scow. And anyways, I was going to grab the engineer from the crab boat that was on the power scow, helping them out with a couple mechanical issues. And I was crossing between the two boats and slipped and fell in between them. Fortunately, it was a flat, calm day, but the current was ripping pretty good. And the water was about 40 degrees. Fell in. The pump was screaming out on deck where they were pumping gillnet fish, gillnet herring. And fortunately, there was a guy that was row teching up there, but he didn't speak very good English, and all he saw was my feet go over. So he grabbed one of the deckhands and communicated in very broken Spanglish, Blake, and pointed over. So I ended up swimming myself back over to a buoy off the side of this crab boat and just pulled myself up and then hung on. And I was just getting ready to start pulling myself back up over the side of the rail when a friend of mine named Wayne looked over, and he looks over and he's got this, wet rat, aka myself, hanging from this buoy, and his eyes caught it. I mean, they were as big as the moon. And he grabs me and just whips me out back on deck. And it was the weirdest thing, because instead of just like being freezing cold and just terrified, I just couldn't stop laughing. It was just weird, It was this odd reaction. So I ended up going inside and taking about a 20-minute shower. Kind of got warmed back up, put some fresh clothes on. Walked back up in the wheelhouse of this boat, wore a life jacket on land the rest of the season, and ended up sitting back down at the radios. And about 45 minutes later, somebody came up and they said, "You haven't slept in a while. You need to go take a nap." And I said, "Yeah, you're probably right." So I took a little nap, and 3 hours later, I woke up and probably went another 30 hours after that.
So, are you one of those guys that when you're scared, you laugh? There are a lot of people like that. My mother was exactly like that.
I start kind of hooting and hollering a little bit. I mean, I've put myself in a lot of scary situations on skis, especially. And he's just like, whoa, whoa, whoa. And I'll get real vocal. But I always giggle afterwards.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of all you can do. But, as time goes on and, I mature in all kinds of different ways, I've kind of stopped putting myself in a lot of those situations because I've realized how amazing life is and how valuable it is, and that you only get one shot, and I'm going to make sure that I live every single bit of it.
And you do. And you do.
I've been known to have a pretty good time.
I know. So let's talk about some of those good times. I mean, Alaska bit you pretty young.
Yeah.
And you kept going.
Yeah.
And it keeps dragging you back.
Yeah, it keeps dragging me back, and we've had all kinds of fun times. I mean, one of the cool things about my job is I get to travel, throughout Alaska. So I've been to most of the coastal communities throughout Alaska, where fishing's fairly prevalent. I've spent a lot of time in small aircraft flying throughout Alaska. Spent a lot of time in helicopters flying out through Alaska. So that's been cool because I've seen such a broad region of it. I work a lot up there, but that doesn't mean that there isn't time for some fun. And
some Pepsis.
A couple Pepsis. And just going out and exploring. Just exploring this beautiful, vast land that we have around us. And so that's been really cool. And I've made some really good lifelong friends. Folks that I ski with. There's been, a couple real memorable gals that I've dated from Alaska, Bristol Bay. And
I heard about a pool game once.
A pool game?
You don't want to play that game, do you?
No, we're not going to play that game.
All right.
I did have a friend one time that did a bachelorette party up there. That was pretty fun. We were 19 up in Bristol Bay, and he was asked to do a bachelorette party. That was a wild time.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, my journeys have taken me all throughout Alaska, and I'm just so very fortunate for all the people and experiences.
Well, and you're still, I mean, you're not young anymore, but you're not old.
I consider myself young just out of respect to a lot of the people that I look up to. I mean, there's so many folks in this industry that have been just incredible mentors to me, and that I truly, truly look up to. I mean, people that are not only like excellent fishermen, but excellent business people, but just excellent people in general. I mean, guys I respect, just being family men and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And it's cool. It's an awesome community and fleet that we have.
And you're 10 years in.
10 years in.
So what would be your suggestion or advice for new guys that are trying to come into our fleet? And when I say our fleet, I'm talking about the entire Alaskan fleet.
Yeah. Well, I've listened to a lot of your podcasts, Mark, and I've thought about this a lot because, I myself started out really not that long ago in the grand scheme of things.
10 years.
10 years, which really isn't that long. I think the best way if a guy or a gal wants to go fishing on one of these boats, and that is their goal, or to get on boats, one of the best ways to start, I think, is getting a job like on the beach gang or something like that. Because being on a beach gang, you constantly interact with like fishing vessels and tender vessels constantly. So through that, you make connections, and I can't tell you how many folks that we've had working on our beach gang that I see, driving away on the back deck of a gillnet or a tender,
Right.
the next season, which is really cool. And so many of them have made this incredible life out of it. The other way is, going to work on a tender boat. You learn line handling skills. You learn how to take a watch. You learn, what it's like to cook, meals in a hurry, and just, make yourself essentially useful on a boat. And that's one of the number one things, when you get started is, well, you've got to figure out a way to make yourself useful right off the bat because you don't know anything.
Useful guys on a tender boat end up on a crab boat or a pollock boat or a salmon. I mean, they end up getting another spot.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I think it's awesome. And
that's strong advice.
Yeah, I've got so many men and women that have worked with me over the years on some of our tenders that are have these great, wonderful, successful careers, fishing careers now, or careers working on, freighter boats. They got sea time working on a tender and then went fishing and decided maybe that wasn't for them, but they're working on freighters, or they hold licenses on processors now. They're doing sport fishing charters somewhere,
Sure.
With their licenses. So, it's really cool. I mean, it opens up an avenue to do so many things, and people have all kinds of various reasons to why they go to Alaska.
Some are running and some are trying to find themselves.
Yeah, exactly. And, when I start a lot of folks out that are younger than myself, I just tell them, I said, hey, look, this is an experience that whether you love it or you hate it, you're never going to forget it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You will always
and I think
remember.
that's cool, because I've had people do both, but I'd say, the majority of people, they love it, and so many of them...
You kind of get that bug.
It's like my brother.
I still...
He calls me all the time. He's like, I am so jealous, and he's just sitting at the desk, and that's all he does.
I still love going to Alaska. I just went up this year.
I know. Yeah. And when I saw you when you got back, I hadn't talked to you in a couple of months. We'd both been busy doing our own respective things. I found out that you were up in Falls Pass, and to see the smile on your face again, you were just reinvigorated.
It was fucking great. I mean, it's like a shot in the arm.
Yeah, it's a big old shot of vitamin B.
That's Alaska.
Yeah,
that's Alaska.
So
great recording here, Blake. Excellent advice.
Yeah.
Do you have anything else you'd like to share before we wrap this up?
I just want to encourage the younger generation, anybody that's listening that hasn't had the opportunity to go to Alaska, to figure out a way to take that opportunity. Fishing, or working for a processor, or working in marine diesel, whatever channel or route you decide to take, it's such an amazing career. Everything is so computer oriented these days, and everybody just sits at a desk and do something outside the box, and that's just out of the ordinary, and get involved. I mean, just get involved. It's such a great path, whether you're involved in a trade, working for a processor, fishing, tendering. Yeah, it's just a different way of life that is... Oh, the rowers are coming by.
we have rowers coming by now, and they're...
sitting here on the gale.
They're going to be screaming out here, but...
No, it's provided an excellent life for myself and so many other folks, here on the West Coast and throughout the world. So.
Well, you're still a young man, just bought your own home.
Yeah.
I mean, so fishing has treated you well.
Yeah, it's provided a good, honest life for me, and it's tough. Everybody that
and you
does
get
this,
those long vacations, run to Costa Rica.
yeah, going to Europe in a few weeks. So no, it's done fine. Not getting rich, but anybody that participates in this, we don't do it for free. We do love it, but it's just a great living and a great opportunity, a great community. So, yeah.
All right, guys. This has been another installment of Galley Stories with Assistant Fleet Manager and Operations Manager for Bristol Bay, Blakely Benson. Everybody calls him Blake, of course. You guys got any questions for Blake? Write into mark@galleystories.net. I'm sure he'll be happy to answer them. Follow us on Facebook. Please follow us on Facebook. Or even on Twitter, which I think I'm now up to 13 or 14 on there. It's getting pretty exciting. I don't think anybody uses Twitter anymore. But anyway, all right, guys. We'll post this one, and we'll see you next time.
Y'all take care and eat wild seafood.
Yeah, we got to end with that, don't we?
We always have to end with that.
Eat wild Alaska seafood.
Yeah.
Yep. All right, guys. See you next time.